Hiring an attorney with experience and tact can make all the difference if you're a man accused of assaulting a woman. This is Christina Williams with Just Criminal Law.
And David Mann, legal storytelling specialist. Well, you and I have worked on cases exactly like that, and I've also worked with another female criminal defense attorney in another state. And I've really found that this subject, this whole territory can be very sensitive, especially for men. I think that a lot of guys, either this has happened to them or they've been accused of crimes like this, or they're afraid it's going to. So I think we should really sort of unpack this and talk about the sensitivity and the nuances in cases like this. What comes to mind first for you on this?
Sure. What's very important is to make sure that your attorney understands the dynamics involved in dealing with a case where an alleged victim has accused you of something wrong. Now, what I mean by dynamics is what caused the allegation? What was the reason you're now being charged with the crime? And there's just, a plethora of reasons. And so your attorney needs to be really skilled at figuring out what was the motive there.
Yeah. So these kinds of stories, these kinds of allegations in these cases that you and I have worked on together, they can be kind of tricky because there often isn't a lot of hard evidence and clear defined like who's got a correct story. It's literally he said, she said. And I think a lot of men who are in these cases and in these situations can be a little afraid that they're never really going to get their story told, that it's always going to be that everyone is going to believe the other side of the story. But I think you're finding that's not always how it works, right?
No, I mean, on the front end, that's how it works most of the time, unless, your client gives a detailed statement to law enforcement. But even at that point, law enforcement's already decided they're going to jail probably. So, it is a very, very taunting, nerve-wracking, scary experience for the man because, why would somebody lie? And that's really what these cases revolve around, when it's he said, she said. And so understanding people and their motives is very important when you're trying to communicate that to a jury. And, that's a skill. That is definitely a talent.
Yeah, so we're all living in the modern culture, and we're hearing these great, big, huge stories of just horrible wrongdoing. And of course, the women, the victims in those stories are in the right. They're telling the truth. They're honest. But those are just the big stories that are in the media involving celebrities or public figures. But you're dealing with everyday people that aren't in the media, that aren't shared all over the place, those stories. And what are you finding is playing out in the courtroom in those types of stories?
Right. So, what's going on when we go to trial on this case is we're looking at, again, why is there the motive to make this accusation? And, 9 times out of 10, the victim is in hot water for doing something wrong, and they're trying to take the heat off of themselves and put it on someone else. So they go so far as to accuse a man of assaulting them. And, that's a majority of the cases that I see, believe it or not. They're just trying to get themselves out of trouble. And they really don't understand how big of a, this ordeal is going to become. And so, that's one part of it. Then the other part of it is, why did law enforcement decide to believe the allegation? And a lot of times, unfortunately, it's just the nature of the investigations at this point in time. The law enforcement officer feels the need to believe the complaining witness and then tailors their questioning and their investigation around collecting statements that support the charge. So I've literally seen them put words in women's mouths that weren't there. They weren't saying that happened. And it's really being able to, point that out to the jury.
Yeah, so that would be very heavily biased and swayed in the opposite direction. And I'm sure that the quote unquote evidence that is put up like that by prosecution can be very, very persuasive. And in the hands of a lawyer that isn't as skilled as you are, or this other female attorney in another state that I've worked with on these types of cases, they can maybe just kind of roll over and go that direction. But when you build a case, or when sometimes you and I have worked together on building a case and building the story for this defendant and making it clear and solid and sort of simple and nuanced and persuasive because it's, true, do you find that it goes sometimes in his direction?
Yes. I mean, I've just had some very, very wonderful results for my clients. And, it is a matter of rolling up your sleeves, looking at the motive of the victim, the investigation of law enforcement, and then preparing your client to take that stand and explain himself. Those three things have been, kind of the metric to a successful result for me. And so, it's each one of those takes a lot of work and a lot of experience in order to pull it off so that the jury really gets a clear picture of the other side of the story. There's always two sides, and law enforcement is going to show the victim's side. It's a good attorney's job to show their client's side. And so the jury then is in the position where they can find the person not guilty and, do it proudly.
So that's very reassuring to hear that's how it plays out in reality on the ground, so to speak, where you're working with real people. Because I think a lot of men are afraid that things could really go wrong, and misinterpretations of events and things can turn out to be very, very dire, serious consequences for them. So if a man, or really anyone, finds themselves accused of this type of crime and really is in a corner, they're going to need a very skilled attorney like yourself. So how might they get in touch with you?
Sure. We'll include a link in the description where they can call, text, or chat with a member of my team anytime, day or night. Here at Just Criminal Law, we know you only get one shot at justice, so make yours count.